definitely feel like I was born into the wrong era. Absolutely. I just think like the contentment of people living in the late 1800s or even the early, like the 1910 through 1920, just people, they lived like a slower lifestyle. People used to spend time together or sew or like write or read and play in the fields. I just, like that, to me, I think is so awesome. I'm originally from Florida, and then when I was about 7, we moved up to Pennsylvania. So I've lived there ever since. And I started commuting to New York City when I was probably like 13 or something. I think the perception of like homeschoolers is kind of backwoods. I don't know. I don't know if you've ever met homeschoolers.
I have.
But for me, it was like really cool. I mean, we would come to the city like 4 days a week and just study on the bus on the ride here. Like, I've never really cared what people think so much about like the way I dress or like things I do. Probably because I didn't go to high school and I didn't have, you know, the whole like being an outcast thing. Like I never really experienced that. So. I'm wearing vintage shorts that used to be pants, but I just hemmed them. This is actually a thrifted Ralph Lauren shirt. Vintage suspenders. Sock Man, which is my favorite store in New York City. They make tights. This is the coolest thing that I've bought in a long time. I was in Lancaster looking for locations 2 weeks ago, and this is an Amish person's hat. And I'm totally, like, fascinated by Amish people. And I found it in an antique store, and the guy said that it was, like, an old Amish man who had died. And it has his initials, ABG. I don't know. I just think that's cool. It's really funny, too, because it's really hard. Like, most of my 70s hats are flimsy, but it's like, you can, like, hear it. So the other day when it rained, it was like the raindrops were, like, it was so loud, like, echoing on my ear, and I was like, what? It was cool. I love this hat. I'm, like, obsessed with it now. This is a vintage dress. I'm kind of assuming it's from probably the 40s. It kind of has a 70s vibe, but...
Turn a little this way.
The fabrics makes me think that it might be from the 40s. Just small detailing and things. But my mom actually bought this for me for my birthday, so it's really special to me.
How?
Bloomers from probably like the early 1900s. A vintage slip probably from the 50s. This is probably from the 80s. It's like a slip from the 80s. This is I think it's a knockoff Victorian jacket because the inside doesn't seem Victorian, but I found it at an antique store. And then this was this belt that they redid from Afghanistan Jewelers down the street on McDougal. Just thrifted jewelry. So this is a 60s, it used to be a dress, but I made it into a top. And I love bows. I'm really bow crazy. Suspenders, hats, and bows are kind of my thing. I have way too many of them. And this is just like a little coat. I really don't know what era this is, but I love the sleeves. Any kind of sleeve like this, I'm kind of obsessed with. Like little trousers on, which I hemmed for pants. I mainly wear Oxford flats pretty much everywhere I go. And these were in the men's division. I think at a flea market or something. I am wearing vintage, like, boy boots. I don't know what they are or what era they're from. And then this dress is from probably the early 1900s. Another gift from my mom. She knows me so well. And it's got 8 million buttons that my husband does not like to have to button me up into. But yeah, it's really, I love the little ribbon work down the side. My tattoo is, there's a Birds album where they went country with Graham Parsons, and it's called Sweetheart of the Rodeo. So I kind of took the drawing that they have on the covers, kind of an ugly girl, so I just told the artist to make her like kind of sexy, and so it's kind of a tribute to that. It's one of my favorite albums. I feel like I can't believe I didn't find photography 10 years ago. I'm shocked by how much I love it. But I mean, I love creating the whole story of it and the characters of the people that I shoot. I put the styling together, and I make sketches and everything. Okay, so this is the very first piece of vintage that I ever bought, and I was 12.
That's very sophisticated for 12.
I never wore it. But, I mean, I'd like play dress up or whatever, but it's so tiny, I really can't even fit it. But it's really beautiful. It's absolutely falling apart though. I really mainly just buy vintage or thrifted things. I don't. Even if I had, like, if someone said you could have like $3,000 to go shopping at, I don't know, some designer stores, I would never. It doesn't interest me. I really like hunt. I like a challenge of like going into a thrift store or a warehouse and just having no idea what I'm going to come home with. It's so fun for me. And I really like just the fact that someone else like lived in these clothes. I don't know why that fascinates me, but it does. This crazy, creepy guy, I forget his name. My husband names all of the taxidermy. The taxidermy is not my idea. I've just had to get used to it. But my husband found him in LA on Craigslist for like $100, which, that's crazy. So this is my, I don't know, my like workroom. This is where I create, like putting together outfits for shoots. This is where I usually paint. Like I've been painting on this kind of stuff, like painting on my pictures that I print. I read like a bunch of these art history books. I do a lot of reading in here. Mainly this is my creating room where I put everything together. Some days I'm really dressed up, in like these Victorian dresses with flats or whatever, and then some days I'm just
little
kind of
boyish.
like little boy.